Today's guest is Ted Fells. He's the president and CEO of NucoreVision Incorporated, which is an enterprise IT cyber and management consulting firm. Ted is also the co-host of the 30-Minute Hour podcast, which is really how we came to meet. Through his co-host, I met Eric, and then through Eric, I met Ted, and I'm really getting to enjoy meeting you and learning more about you. And today, I can't wait to hear all the details. So, Ted, thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Great to be here, Jeremy. Thank you so much for this invitation.
So, Ted, for those who don't know you already, talk about your background. Talk about where you're from, who you are, and what you do.
And Ted Fells, I'm president and CEO of NucoreVision. I'm from Arlington, Virginia. Um, Background again, born and raised in Arlington, Virginia. Those of you that are familiar with Arlington, Washington, Liberty High School now was Washington Lee High School. Go Generals. Um, Graduated from Norfolk State University and worked for the federal government right after that, right? Worked for it kind of tells my age a bit, the Immigration and Naturalization Service, which is now, pretty much DHS ICE, and was involved in installing computer networks all over the US. And then from there, kind of went into business. And I guess we'll get deeper into that.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit first. Like, did you always know this is what you wanted to do? What did, as you come out of high school, what were you thinking?
IT entrepreneur. I knew right then that I was going to be doing cloud and infra. No, Jeremy, I did not. I did not know, Jeremy. It's just funny. I think about when I was in high school and some of the classes that I took and things that I did. And, yeah, I look at everything pretty much in kind of from spiritual perspective of how God just kind of lined things up. And I had no idea how these pieces were going to fit together. I think about, my mom just kind of stressing that I learned how to type, right? I was like, typing. Why do I want to do that, right? But I did, and um, I had a job working for the federal government, the Social Security Administration, while in high school, and there was typing and doing things like that, and working on what Wang word processors, right? And
Oh, yeah.
I was doing that, and it was really kind of funny. I was doing these congressional letters, and I'd come in from, let's say, from 2 to 5 every day after school, and there's these stacks of these files that I had to kind of type up and get put over to for to go through the process. And it was interesting. They'd say that I'd get more done probably in like 3 hours than like most people did like in a whole day. I'd just be in there just kind of typing away and got really good at that. Um, I then joined INS again while in high school and was working in kind of kind of like their computer room, and again not having any idea that these things were gonna kind of come together until I got into the college. And again there, once again, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do there. And I went in there, Jeremy, and I heard a lot of people talking about they wanted to be like accounting majors. Sounded good, Jeremy. I just forgot that I hated accounting in high school, but I don't know why I got into it. Got into it, didn't last long, and then a friend came to me and said, "Why don't you look into like management computer information systems?"
Ah.
Right. And that friend of mine, he always reminds me, I got you into this, I got you into this, right? And that was kind of the start on this kind of this IT track.
So did you have a reason why you picked that specific college?
So I had some friends that went there and graduated from there. And so, I thought it wasn't too far from home, right? Norfolk, you probably can get down there within 2.5 hours. So if you didn't like it, you can come on back. And then there were some guys there that I knew from like the neighborhood that I grew up with. So, and then I also had a cousin, interestingly enough, that always kind of looked out for me. Like when I was in my cousin Pat, when I was in elementary school, she was probably like in the fourth grade. I was in the first grade. She kind of showed me around. When I got to high school, I was a freshman, and she was a senior, and she kind of showed me around. And then she was in the Navy in
Oh,
Portsmouth,
wow.
Virginia. So I said, that's good things. Not too far, hats around if it gets too crazy, and so yeah, so it just kind of worked out that way. It was a, great opportunity.
So then, yeah, that's all. I love it. I love having that family connection and friend connection, right?
Yeah,
That drives decisions. Community is important.
absolutely.
So as you worked with INS, I assume then after you graduated, they brought you on full time.
Yeah, so so I worked for INS, and this is interesting. So I worked for the INS sub office while I was in which was in Norfolk, Virginia, while I was in college. And I also had, in the summers when I came home, I worked at the Washington district office. And so once I, graduated, the kind of officer in charge at the Norfolk sub office reached out to the office in DC and said, "Hey, we got a guy here that would like to be an intern." And so they brought me into the internship program. And because again, and this was like after, like right as I graduated, because I didn't have a plan at all then. And then God kind of opened up that door for me. So I can't. I was able to work as an intern, and then eventually, really at the end of the summer, they hired me on as a government employee.
Nice.
Yeah.
And yeah. And so what happened after the government?
Well, so while I was working for the government, I mean, we were implementing a technical infrastructure kind of project. And interestingly enough, this again, this tells my age, Jeremy. Like throughout the INS, there were like typewriters and standalone computers. So this project was one where we're going out and doing site surveys of these various locations and then determining what type of equipment and cabling and network and all that kind of stuff that needed to happen. The interesting thing about this is we each had different locations we were responsible for. So I got to go as a young guy to a lot of amazing places and, and like Laredo, Texas and Hawaii and places. I mean, just so many places. My friends used to be like, man, what do you do? Like you're always traveling. But this is the coolest thing. Uh, so each of the locations where I worked at ended up being one of my sites. So the Washington district site, the Norfolk sub office, like all those places ended up being sites that I had to come back to
Nice.
as a project lead, and saw some of those same people that, were very influential in, my development through both high school and college and then going back. And it was just a really great thing to be able to help them to make sure that they got the types of things that they wanted to get. And and they always were just so supportive of me and proud of me. So it was just kind of an amazing situation. And then, as you said, after, while I was working for the government, I having the opportunity to interact with a lot of large IT companies as we were going out and deploying infrastructure. Jeremy, I used to think I was a pretty sharp technical guy myself, right? And so I'd be out there with these teams of folks, and they'd be working on stuff, and I'd just be like, "Give me that keyboard. Give me that keyboard. You're not going to have us here all night long." And eventually, I said, "Well, you know what? I could do this." And so initially, as a group of friends, we kind of got together and decided that we were going to start a company, and we started doing providing IT services to law firms and churches and whoever would let us go in and play around with their computer systems. And that's kind of how that got started.
Oh, wow. And so then how long has the company been around?
So the company has been around for now 29 years.
Wow.
And that's interesting with me only being like 30. I don't know how I was able to do that. Yeah, 29 years.
So then how's that growth curve, right? So you start a business, you take the risk, you and a bunch of people do it
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
What's that growth curve look like over that 29 years?
That it's been, you have those kind of peaks and valleys in this, right? You start off, and I think that, you know several of my friends that that colleagues that have companies, they started in the private sector. So they already knew about how to kind of go and chase business and all that. And I had started
Mm-hmm.
in the government, so I was used to being more of we were the chase versus the chasers, right?
Right.
And so it took a while to really, you know, learn, really what it takes to do this. And so, so the company, has done well. It's sustained over, 29 years. I've employed a lot of people, and then it's interesting. I've seen a lot of people that have left the company and have started doing amazing things. So I feel that, privileged that I was able to have some some fingerprints on some of those careers that are out there as well. But yeah, just excited about the company just as much as I was, I think, when I first started.
I mean, that's a great story in that, as you know, in this space, in this GovCon space, lots of businesses start and lots of businesses end. And
Yeah,
so the fact that you've kept this sustained um, activity over 29 years, certainly peaks and valleys, right? That's work everywhere. But that you're still here, still standing, still employing people,
blessing.
still right. That
It's a
that
blessing.
is something to celebrate.
Yeah, definitely. Thank God.
So then, Ted, when you look back over your career, and you see things you've done and the people you've interacted with and the technology you've had to deal with, what's something that you look at and go, man, I wish it didn't have to be that way. There's got to be a better way for whatever to occur. And I'm going to caveat and say, you and I today, we may talk about it a bit, but we may not be the smartest people in the room. Well, we're the smartest
Yeah.
people in these rooms right now,
Yeah,
but
that's right. That's right. It's
but
just
we
you and I here. So yeah,
yes,
that's right.
right. But we may not, we don't have to come up with solutions that to make it better. But what's something you would look at and go, somebody should take a look at that.
Wow, that's a tough question because I think that a lot of the things that I went through, if I could do them all over again, like okay, but you don't get the do over,
Hmm.
right? I've seen situations where I've had friends that, let's say their parents were in business, right? And they had a very successful company, and then they bring in, the son or the daughter, and it's kind of, hey, we take some of our experience, business development team and proposal writers, and move to the new company, or we take some of our technology, super smart people, and we move them here, and then these guys just take off like this. You're like, man, that would have been really cool, right? But then it's like, just going through it the way that I've gone through it, I've learned so much. Always, tell people, when they come to me and like, oh man, I want to start my own company. And I'm like, well, I always say, well, do you want your own business or do you want to make a lot of money? Right? Right? Because they're not the same thing, right? Like
Right.
you can go make a lot of money working for someone, right? I know plenty of my friends that are like, I'm like, what do you do? And they're like killing it. Like they're just killing it. But this has just been so rewarding, right? I think, just the people part, the strategy part. Like people are always kind of like, oh man, when do you want to sell and all that? And I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, I'm having fun. Like I like the people part. I like the strategy part. Like I like, okay, I sit around, you look at different scenarios over the years. Like I think about like at one point I was kind of just getting started and then it was like Y2K and you had to come up with some type of a strategy, right, to how you're going to do that. And then, you're moving forward and we're dealing with the things like from COVID pandemic, right? Okay, how do we go from
Yeah.
there? And then it's like now, we see some changes happening with the new administration. And it's like you've seen this before. Like I have this saying all the time. I think I shared with you when you were on our podcast of you, you feel like you're locked in a room and you got to get out, right? Like what are you going to do in this situation to get out, right?
Hmm.
Like for so long you're like, oh, this stinks, and then after a while you got to be like, okay, let's come together, let's assess this situation, let's come up with a strategy, and then let's figure out the best way to execute. And Jeremy, I think I'm one of those crazy people that likes that. Like I kind of like that whole challenge part and just kind of putting your head together and figuring it out and then doing great things with great people. I think I really enjoy that. So I think even if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably be in another small organization, right? I want to be a big fish in a small pond versus a small fish in a big pond.
Hmm. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So Ted, when you look forward for this year and for yourself and for the company, what's coming up for you?
Just just this new strategy. Just looking at, how to do things differently. Innovation is such a big deal. Like, and people say, oh, it's always been a big deal. But I know, I think it's like really like when you're talking about, efficiencies and all that kind of stuff and really truly having to do like more with less. And I share, I'm like, I just think that if you got some good people, right, and then you can, you get the connections, right, you can kind of work in any environment. I mean, connections, network, I mean, it's so important, right? It's so
Mm.
important. I think I go back to, how I, got jobs in high school and how I got jobs in college and how, like, it's always been relationship based, right? So I've just been kind of blessed to be in those situations where it's kind of like, okay, well, here's this person, and you meet this person. This person's able to connect you to this particular, opportunity. And so thinking about moving forward, it's like, okay, Ted, it's going to have to be relationships, right? You're going to have to connect with, certain types of organizations. You're going to have to bring in, the best and the brightest that you can because it's that the needs are still there, right? The
Yeah.
needs are still there. That hasn't changed, but you know, I think the strong will, will survive, right? And so again, just looking forward to that challenge.
Well, Ted, I'm looking
Awesome.
forward to that as well, and to seeing how
Yes,
that it goes for you. I have great anticipation because you and I have
thank
had
you.
some great chats. I love what your
Absolutely.
company's doing, and
Thank you.
yeah, and hopefully this we'll see what the new year brings for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's great. Thank you so much.